And the other thing I've done is a lot of detail on Pontius Pilate. Who was he? And why did he not? What he should have done, as I've said in the commentary, when he saw the mob going for Jesus for Sophia-phobic reasons, they just hate wisdom, these type of people. He should have said, okay, I'm not going to sentence him here now because you're all a bit hysterical. We're not getting clear evidence. You haven't brought proper evidence. He should have taken him into protective custody and taken him down to Caesarea, which was his seat of power. That was the city on the coast built by Herod the Great. And then he could have tried Jesus properly with proper witnesses according to proper law. I believe he would have found him innocent. But instead he handed him over to the mob. And that was the fatal error of Pontius Pilate. He gave in to fear. He should have said, okay, he's coming with me, he's going down to Caesarea.
Oh, but he already said that he found Jesus was innocent.
Yeah, well then he should have taken him into protective custody. Why did he give him to the mob?
Because of the mob power and the Jews' power. I guess it's
sure,
when you have everybody.
But if you're the Roman governor and you have legions with you, you stand up to that.
Legion is.
He should have stood up to it.
Case by case is okay, but against all people, it's.
Well, no, because let's not forget, not all the Jews in Jerusalem wanted Jesus to be killed. There were many that were on his side, many highly intelligent, like Nicodemus, like Joseph of Arimathea, and many others, would have opposed this. It was just a small faction in the Sanhedrin, in fact.
That's
in my opinion.
Yeah, but it's interesting because you digged into all that stuff of
Yes.
the story at the end of Jesus.
Just as Easter's happening, I'm researching all this.
And you mentioned last time that soldiers were insulting Christ. And
mocking.
There is another point I find very interesting nowadays, is that the mob was, as you say, with propaganda, was against the Christ with no reason. And we could see nowadays the same thing. We have a lot of propaganda against some people or against the virus or against many stuff.
Sure.
It's
the same mob
it's like
mentality.
a repetition.
It's always going on.
Yeah, we are very fragile because we don't know what is the truth. Maybe the common guy in that time, okay, the priest said this guy is saying he's the son of God. That's quite a little strange. I agree that we should.
Well, had it been explained properly, they would have.
I guess the propaganda was good.
Yeah, the propaganda was there, and it's been going full steam ever since. So, my job as a scholar is to find the truth.
Yes.
As much as we can.
Yes.
It's like sort of going through the ashes of Ground Zero, and seeing how did these buildings fall down.
Yeah.
What's this? What's this strange, explosive we're finding here, made of white powder? Whatever. So, and the other thing I just want to say is I watched a fascinating film this week with Arthur C. Clarke, science fiction writer and a scientist guy, on fractals, on Mandelbrot, the Mandelbrot set. It's on Netflix, and I really recommend this scientific documentary about the Mandelbrot set. And Arthur C. Clarke he's such a good presenter. It creates infinite patterns through a mathematical self-referencing loop. What's interesting is that Mandelbrot, who figures in the film, was made a while back, who was Jewish, lived in Paris, he was French, and then he escaped here to La Creuse, and he spent the war in Toul, which is a city just south of here, where he was befriended by the local rabbi, who kept him out of the hands of the Gestapo. And so we have Mandelbrot's survival because of intellectuals who appreciated him. He was already good at maths then and a scholar. And after the war was over and the Nazis fortunately lost, he eventually went back to Paris, but then he went to the States and worked at IBM and things like that. And he founded this whole new field of geometry called fractal geometry. And what's interesting, what I learned from this, the fractal is very interesting because it's about repeating patterns at every different level of scale. So you see a general pattern, like there's my hand, it's a pattern, right? If you zoom in on each little thing, you see then another hand. And then you zoom in on those and there's another hand. And it goes all the way to infinity. If you could run the simulation, it
like
would,
a video into a mirror.
yeah, it's mathematically it's an infinity. And what I'm interested in is fractal geometry applied to intellectual history, because ideas tend to come in with, take this thing about mobbing, say. It exists in nature among different animal species. It exists among football crowds. It exists on the internet. It exists among politicians. For all we know, it exists at the level of angels and demons, you know, like if there are supernatural beings doing it. So it's a fractal world we live in, a fractal reality. And if my take as a philosopher, inspired by Kant, is if we clean up our level of being, we can magically clean up all the other levels. That's the kind of theory of the categorical imperative. If we act morally and don't do things like mobbing and killing and torture, then that ripples out. That gives us the power to affect all the levels.
And listening to your talk, who are we? That means we at the individual level, but we at our collective level or our cell level as well. The we change.
Well, it's interesting, the French word nous, we, is the same as the Greek word nous, which means the intellect. And I think there's an etymological link here between these. So I think we is the cosmic intellect, which manifests through us if we tend to our philosophical studies with any seriousness. And I've discovered this week a brilliant French etymologist, Charles Dufresne Duconge, 1610 to 1685, who went into all the details of the origins of French words. So, like nous, why do we use that word? He did all the research going back into medieval Latin and whatever. So, yes, people of goodwill and intellect, we need to come together and enact the fractal peace, where we get peace at all levels, I would say. Anyway, that's my little introduction. Let's have the
Periodic table?
periodic table. I think they're behind you somewhere, aren't they? Where have they gone?
Here the,
There they are, yes. Good.
you don't spoke about the héron.
Thank you. Great. So, okay, well let's choose. Let's see. You know, this is like a fractal map of reality. And my good friend Sachin Raja, who helps produce these in Canada, is visiting Los Angeles at the moment, and hopefully going to the Philosophical Research Society in Los Angeles, which has this amazing library. So that's exciting. Okay. Choose one you haven't done before. It's always a good policy. Now, while still thinking, I'm just going to get something there. Right, have you found one?
Yeah, I fell down on new regulars.
Okay, which
New
number?
religion number 100.
Ah.
New thought.
Oh, okay. That's great.
I
Thank
think
you.
that is required these days.
We need some new thinking, yes, yes. Okay. What one are you going to go for?
One of the Christians, and maybe the Protestant one.
Number 56.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Okay. Well, thank you. Well, we ought to go with the Protestant one first, chronologically, I think. And then we'll do the New Thought, because it was a sort of outgrowth from the Protestant tradition, largely in America, but also Europe and Britain. Yes, so the word Protestant, I mean, it's a form of Christian. It's number 56. There's about 650 million people at the moment recognised on the planet who are Protestants. It comes from a particular meeting that happened in Germany when a group of Lutherans and others protested against the extremism of the church, what was going on in the Catholic Church in Germany in the sort of mid-1500s. Luther had come along and other people had critiqued the church and said what you're doing is wrong, like especially selling indulgences. The idea that you could get into heaven if you bought a piece of paper saying, because I gave the church 400 gold coins, now me and my entire family are going to heaven. Like Luther pointed out, as an academic like me, he said this is wrong, this is bonkers. And that was just one of the many things he grumbled about. He grumbled against what he saw as the misogyny of the church. He believed that women had an equal right to share in the kingdom of heaven as well as men, and that marriage was not something to be frowned on. It was a beautiful thing, and he himself got married. And often the Protestants were women as well. He also said that everyone should have the right to read the Bible in their own language, not just in Latin preserved for the elite. Everyone should be able to read it. And so he, in fact, spent some years working away, translating the Bible into normal German, so ordinary people could read it, which was a radical step. I mean, now we would think, well, that's just common sense, but in those days it was radical. And he was threatened, he was bullied, and the emperor invited him to debate with the leading Catholic theologians, and he offered him a safe passage, which is fortunate because then Luther was able to get out alive. So that's, the Protestants were, the other thing to say about the rise of Protestantism, it coincided with the rise of printing. The printing press was just kicking in. So these ideas could spread. Before printing, when things spread with handwritten texts, whoever ran the scriptoria, which was largely the church, had a monopoly on knowledge. They could decide what to print and what to censor. And the church made pretty sure that any ideas were weeded out and censored that were a threat to its monopoly of knowledge. And so the printing press democratized knowledge in a way that was quite revolutionary. And so wherever printing presses started to come into being, people tended to read these texts. And the idea of the Protestants then spread. Simultaneously, you had Calvin, who was the French Protestant leader, who was highly intellectual, who ended up in Geneva, again, spreading ideas, teaching, with texts and commentaries. And in Britain, the same ideas spread as well, although the king, Henry VIII, didn't want it to go too far. He hedged his bets. He wanted to stay partly Catholic and partly Protestant, because he saw that if we all go down the only Protestant route, we'd end up as kind of extreme anti-Catholics. And there were some shocking incidents, for instance, in Holland, where extreme Protestants would attack monks and torture and kill them, just because they were Catholic. and extreme anti-Catholic Catholic stuff got into the Protestant gene, which I think was unfortunate. I think Henry was kind of right to say, no, hang on, let's have a middle way. And his daughter, Queen Elizabeth, took that view. The Church of England was both Protestant and Catholic. It was trying to be the best of both. And that's why I was baptized. When I chose to be baptized, I thought, which one? But I decided if I'm an Anglican, I can be both Protestant and Catholic. I can try and be faithful to both. The Via Media, Queen Elizabeth called it. So I'm a Protestant, yeah. I protest against injustice and evil. But I'm also a Catholic in that I want universal truth and wisdom to prevail. And, so that's the Protestants. Fast forward, they're still protesting. One of the things that my commentary on Matthew's thrown up, which is interesting, is the evangelical wing of Protestantism talks about being born again. Unless you're born again, you can't be saved, Like the water baptism doesn't count. You've got to be born again, right? And they're really heavy on this. And then you give loads of money to the church. Well, that all comes out of a conversation in the Gospel of John between Nicodemus and Jesus. Yeah. And they're discussing this. And they were talking in Greek, obviously. The word they use is anothen. Anothen is interpreted born again. And Nicodemus thinks that what is Jesus talking about. But it really means born from above. Anothen means to be born from above, i.e. from the realm of God, the kingdom of God. So it should be, so this idea of being born again, which is the whole evangelical Christian thing, is really a misunderstanding of the Greek text, in my opinion. And what we should be talking about is, what it's about is when your spirit is reborn from your knowledge of higher worlds, as Rudolf Steiner called it. He wrote his epic book, Knowledge of Higher Worlds. When we realise there's a kingdom, and by the way, the Greek in Matthew is the kingdom of the heavens, plural, the heavens, right? When we realise there's a kingdom of the heavens, then we are born again as citizens of that. I mean, I'm a Canadian citizen, a British citizen, a French resident, I'm a European citizen, but I'm mainly a kingdom of the heavens. That's where I come from, and that's where I'll go back. Our life here temporally is very, very short, in my opinion.
I agree with you. I find it's the foundation of spirituality.
It's more what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So you agree with me? One can be a Protestant Catholic. I only wish I believe the Pope who just died, Francis, would have understood what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He would have sat there and said, yeah, Thomas, you're talking sense here. Why don't you join the Jesuits? But, there are great thinkers out there, both Protestant and Catholic. Another one of my heroes is Leibniz. Now, he was both a Protestant and a Catholic. He worked for a time with Catholics in the south of Germany. And he worked in the north. He set up the academy in Berlin with the Prussian monarchs, So I think they're both, they're adjectives. Being a Protestant is an adjective. It means I'm a person who protests against evil. It's not a sort of club that you join. I mean, it's not an easy club to be in, because if you protest, you can get stoned by the mob, And the other thing I want to say is I've been reading Bonhoeffer, one of the greatest Protestant theologians of the 20th century, who was active in Germany. He did a PhD, he did his studies in Tübingen and elsewhere. Thought he was going to have a normal life as a Lutheran vicar, priest, and then Hitler came along. And Hitler tried to shut every independent seminary and church and make them all the German National Church. They'd all be good Nazis. You couldn't become a vicar unless you were a good German Nazi vicar. And Bonhoeffer got together with a bunch of protesters and said, that's not what Christ taught us. And he wrote a book called, his most important text called Discipleship, which was based on St Matthew's Gospel. So this Gospel I'm doing the commentary on is dynamite. When Bonhoeffer read it, he said, it's a call to arms, guys. It's a call to action. We have to resist this evil, not just pretend it's not happening, you know. And then he was eventually killed by the Nazis just a couple of months before the war was over. He was in a concentration camp and hung. You know, he knew that if you really protest, you're going to annoy people. So my take on this is to do it very cleverly, like Jesus said, be as wise as a serpent. Don't go marching down the street saying, you know, or you'll get shot. Do it cleverly. So anyway, that's the Protestant tradition.
Yeah, make somebody else march for you.
Make somebody.
Some other people march.
Yes.
Well, there are times when one should march. I mean, I've done my marching as well back in the day, but I can't really see us doing it in Betet. I mean, things might get so bad we'll have to, but...
Yes, and what is very interesting that in this passage of the Gospel, he takes the image of intendant with dishonest. He said, be like this guy, as
be like a serpent.
A serpent.
But as innocent as a
yeah,
dove.
he takes the example of a dishonest guy.
Well, no, snakes aren't dishonest. They're just snake-like. You know?
No. He was dishonest. He was robbing some money, but
okay. Well,
that's my memory. Maybe I'm missing, but it's a very interesting text. Yes, recommendation to follow the behavior of this guy. Of course, for a good purpose, but be as this guy.
Okay, well, I don't recall. That's not my reading of the text, but we'll discuss it next week. I'll have the text with me.
Also read the last collection from Ken Follett.
Okay.
Trilogy.
Yes.
And that was very much in the religious wars between Protestants and Catholic. It was horrible stuff going on.
When was it set in Ireland or in Europe?
In Europe.
In the
Netherlands,
1700s,
France,
during
Netherlands, France, England.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Horrible stuff.
I mean, they were all slaughtering each other, and then the Swedes got involved.
Yeah. That's why in France we are for laicity. We don't want religious matters to interfere with politics.
No.
We are vaccinated. We don't want that.
Well, that's why I do my work as a scholar. I think we can't ignore religion, but we should try and understand it, and then, as it were, vaccinate against its toxicity.
I think the idea behind religion, all religions, it's my opinion anyway, is just originated like a book of proper behavior.
Like core morality text.
Yes, be good. Be good, to do to others what you want them to do to you.
Yeah, like all parents tell their children.
Exactly.
You know.
But in a wider format, in widescreen, basically.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah, but I think there is a second level of lecture, because this is one part, but the second part is really radical. As we spoke before, you have to rebirth, because there is something part of the humanity, but beyond the humanity. It's really interesting. Yes,
it's always a big theme to discuss. That isn't it?
Sure.
It's an enormous theme to discuss.
Well, that's what we're here for. That's the first time. But can I just add to what you just said? I think I said this before a couple of weeks ago. I want to reiterate. The Ten Commandments, which are the core texts, are shortchanging the people, because they're taken from Egyptian influence, where Moses was educated, and it's the 47 commandments, or is it the 42? I can never remember. It's the 42 commandments of Ma'at, who's the goddess of justice and law. And we know that because we found ancient Egyptian texts that talk about these I think it's 42 commandments.
Yeah.
And I've written them all out, I've got them. And they're, you know, if you only give people the 10 commandments, they can get a bit lost. They can think that, you know, slaughtering and bombing people in Gaza is fine because 10 commandments, you know, that's all. If you do the 42 commandments of Mart, it's absolutely against the real ethics. And I would love to see our Bibles reprinted with all the 42 commandments in. You know, if I live long enough, I'll do a new edition of the Bible with all the apocryphal texts and all that, and the Hermetic and the Egyptian stuff. Yeah.
I'm brought up in the Protestant, well, we had the 10 Commandments, of course,
Yeah.
as one always are taught as a kid.
Yeah.
But also they came with explanations to each commandment. Somebody's cleverly
Yeah, a lot
written
of
an
thought
explanation.
into
I
them.
think it was. I wonder if it was Martin Luther.
Well, you were in a Lutheran church in Norway,
Yeah.
presumably. Yeah, he wrote a lot about all this stuff. But I mean, he didn't know his Egyptology. He didn't have access to all the 500 years of
No.
scholarship since
No.
his time.
Probably not.
If he were, he would go, wow, you know, like, wow. He would love it. Because I think it sort of proves, it goes some way towards proving his concept of that the important thing is faith. But to have faith, you also have to have knowledge, which was the counter to Luther and the Jesuit teaching, which is faith's great, but faith in what? You know, who proposes what the faith is? So that's where knowledge comes in, and reason, and research, and scholarship. You need both faith and reason, in my opinion.
Yes, but there are both kind of faith, especially among French people. We have a phrase for that. Some people, they have faith like innocent people. They say, la foi du charbonnier. Charbonnier is a low-level, low-skill guy who is put carbon to heat the house or the tray.
Yeah.
And there is the phrase, la foi du charbonnier, because...
Okay. That means a simple peasant type.
Yes, but you see,
Yeah.
children, it's marvelous, because at 6 years old,
They have that faith.
they have the faith.
I thought the Charbonniers were like Freemasons. There's a lodge of Charbonniers.
Maybe, I don't know.
Do you know about them?
No.
They're a branch of Freemasons that use the image of the charcoal burners.
Yeah.
They make the charcoal. And George Sand wrote a novel about them.
Ah,
One of her epic novels, she was the local writer here. She was descended from Freemasons herself, as was Pierre Leroux, her boyfriend for a time. And they would have discussed all this stuff in Nohol a couple of hundred years ago. But no, and what's the sophisticated form? If the Charbonnier is the primitive faith, what's the more sophisticated?
like you presented it. You confront always reason with what drives you, and you see that the reason is not against faith.
They go together
Yeah.
like a synthesis. Yeah. That's good. And well, there's hope for mankind, possibly. We hope. Okay, let's move on and look at the next one, because this is taking the conversation further, which is the new religious movement called New Thought, which is number 100. Probably about 7 million at the moment, influenced by it. So this was New Thought in like the end of the 19th century. That's where the phrase came from. And it was mainly people in Boston, bless Boston, we love it, where Emerson was, who was like the grandfather of New Thought, right?
Edison?
No, Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Sorry.
Emerson, American philosopher, and called a New England transcendentalist. And basically Emerson, who went to Harvard Divinity School, he was thinking of training as a vicar, but then he decided, no, I don't want to go around preaching faith. I want to be a philosopher and find out truth.
There's a tea party in Boston.
And so he researched widely and deeply into all the world's faiths, and he said that we have to invert the customary concept, which is that most Christians and Protestants, or Catholics even, think of, here we are, the human, with our minds and souls, we're all a bit corrupt and perverse. And then there's God, who's perfect, the creator. And all we can do is, in our prayers, we can sort of get some little crumbs of wisdom, or like reading, because for Protestants, reading is a spiritual duty, as it was for Augustine. He had his enlightenment experience reading. So did Luther. So, and that's the best we can do. God is up there perfect, and we're just little humans. Emerson said, no, that's actually, I've studied all the world's faiths, that's not actually how it is. He'd read Indian thought, he'd read the Upanishads, he'd read all the other faiths, and he said, no, the real story is, it's inside us that is that place of perfection. It's not up there and out there. It's in the human mind, once we've disciplined it and educated it and evolved it through meditation, through study, research. So new thought meant like changing the lens on the camera and making it point inward. So instead of God being out there, and your God up there is different to my God up there, so we'll kill each other, No, it's in here. It's what he called the oversoul. The oversoul. The soul.
It means a collective for each. It's a kind of unity of the soul?
Yes. It's kind of what we could call the collective superconscious of humanity, to take Jung's idea further. So the collective superconscious is, it's in you, it's in him, it's in me, it's in everyone. But it's not active, it's dormant in us. And so these new thought practitioners said we need to totally change the way Christianity is presented. It's not miserable worms, here we are, terrible people, let's all get on our knees and pray to the big God up there. No, let's find the majesty of the human soul inside us, and let's activate it through meditation, through study, through prayer, through all kinds of things. And so these churches were set up as alternatives to the conventional mainstream, either Protestant or Catholic. There's one famous one called Unity Church that is still going. There was a thing called The Science of Mind, written by Ernest Holmes, who was one of these thinkers, which is a textbook about, what is the science of mind? How can you stop thinking negative thoughts, is what they were asking. We torment ourselves with fear, guilt, revenge, anger, all this stuff. So the science of mind and new thought generally tries to say, no, we can purify our inner lives, and if we do, it's the path to happiness and enlightenment, collectively. So they're pioneering people. I've met practitioners, and one variant of it was called Christian Science by Mary Baker Eddy, and that's a variant of New Thought. And a very recent example of it is by an Australian woman who wrote a book called The Secret. I don't know if either of you saw this thing. It was made into a film. It became very popular about 10 years ago, The Secret. And she presented all this in a user-friendly way. She said, this is the great secret of all religions. Underlying all the boxes, the secret is God is within you. And you have the key. You can access it.
That's what all mystics say. Rumi or whatever.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. So New Thought was trying to say, well, how do we do it? What does that key look like?
Some say this is illusion, or personal stuff are illusion, and we are only this new stuff, the collective soul. Yeah.
So it's quite popular, and you'll find loads of people talking about this on the internet. Just Google New Thought, you'll find, like my friend who's now in LA, there are every other